started because time is of the essence, as it always is. So I'll pretend to introduce myself so we can get started. I'd like to introduce you to Brian Solis. Hey, thank you for that great introduction. It's wonderful. How many of you are in marketing traditional? All right, now how about advertising? All right, and communications? Wow, what a balance. How about all of the above? Okay, all right, well, we're going to talk a little bit about part engagement, part social media, but also part customer. It's amazing to me now that I've shifted my game from being in the field to studying the field. I just recently joined the Altimeter group with folks like Jeremiah Aoyang and Charlene Lee. And it's interesting to me to see how many research reports exist about the pervasiveness of social media in business today, and how very few research reports show what customers actually want. We can see exactly what brands are doing. We can see which ones are winning awards and which ones have best practices and centers of excellence. But we can't necessarily see what that means in the real world. And I think what we're going to start to see here moving forward, and what I'd like to talk about, is how do we raise the game so that we don't have to sit here this time next year and figure out, why did we get all of those unlikes and unfollows? Why did we get all of those people who once liked us in social to stop abandoning us? What happened? And I got to be honest with you, sometimes I feel like the headline in this recent Ad Age article, why I've begun to hate the term social media. And I think a lot of it has to do with just not necessarily understanding what it is or what it isn't anymore, right? I think if we say social media, we think marketing, we think Facebook, we think Twitter, we think editorial calendars, we think of landing pages and how to get people to like and to follow and to fan. We look at it from a one-to-many perspective, which was traditional marketing, to now this idea of many-to-many marketing. But I think, I'm not going to give up on the term yet, I hope you don't either, because it actually represents much more than just marketing. It represents an opportunity for you and me, all of us, to do something that matters a little bit more than how we did it today. And it's neither one-to-many nor many-to-many. It's this idea of strategic engagement, 1 + 1 = many. And therein lies the promise. Therein lies the opportunity. How many of you use Twitter? All right. How many of you have more than 1,000 followers? Wow. I know some pretty important people today. That is 1 to 1 to many, right? In the human realm, word of mouth, really, I think the greatest scale ratio you could hope for was 5. You might refer a product or a company to 5 people you know. But in social, all you have to do is say something over and over and over again. 5 to 8 times you say it, and it might stick to the 1,000 people following you. It's a different game. The reason why social media still has a lot of life left is because it's less about the technology and more about the sociology associated with it. This is about a human network, of which I have to give credit to Cisco for borrowing their term, although I can't give them credit for shutting down flip video so quickly. But it's the idea of real people connected to real people. It's not about getting fans and followers and how many views. Those are byproducts of what you do in what I call the ecosystem. And it's a term of endearment. But each and every one of you represent the people you're trying to reach, and you are at the center of your own universe, quite literally. You define who you connect with. You define what information comes into your stream. You define who you interact with. And all of the information that finds you, that evolves around you, is all because of you. You dictated it. This is your ecosystem. And as a brand, as a business, as a marketer, we have to realize that where we once sat in boardrooms coming up with the next quarter's messages and the next quarter's campaigns so that we could compete for the future, well, that's just the beginning. Now, we have to compete for the moment, so real time, And we have to compete for relevance, right time. And relevance is what I believe is the future of all of this. In order to cater to the ecosystem, something has to be relevant. So the idea of one to many or many to many lose favor, lose focus, lose preference. The future of brand equity is not based on what you say about you. It's based on what other people say about you. But not just in each instance, but as it collects into one great repository of sentiment. And that's both the promise and both the challenge of social media. Because this new type of consumer that is emerging, this social consumer, is not really going to Google what brands they should consider. They're going to ask their friends. They're going to search their social streams to see what people think about those brands. So they're not going to check your website. They're not going to check your marketing materials. They're going to see what people think. They're going to see your brand and its equity as defined by people like them. For example, here's the brand equity of an airline that we all know. And this is just pulled from social. This is what people say and think about that airline. And just to be sure, I went to their website to see if this is how the airline describes themselves. And I was surprised that it wasn't. But as a social consumer, I can assure you that I didn't go double check the website. I was content with knowing that this was not going to be an option for me as a consumer. Would I consider following this airline if this is what my friends think about it? No, absolutely not. This is the airline's brand equity now. The brand, do you know how the brand is attacking this? By putting on its cocktail napkins that we should follow them on Twitter and friend them on Facebook. I sat on this airline recently and I got that cocktail napkin and I wanted to wave down the flight attendant, you know, I don't know if you really want me to do this. I really hated everything about this experience, and I would use this to tell people. So instead of realizing that this is what its brand equity is, it is telling more people to come and add to this. Instead of recognizing that social media is a collection of real-world experiences. You can't manipulate it. You can't market at it. You have to shape and steer it. That means your game just got a little harder, but your game got a lot more valuable because anybody who can start to shift that wins. This isn't engagement. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. How easy is that to do? Yet you watch television, you watch the news, and at the bottom corner of everything is find us on Facebook and find us on Twitter. How many of you race off to do just that? Don't raise your hand. I actually don't. I need to make my point. Nobody does that because that's not how you think as a consumer. In fact, you want these brands to come to you. Yet, this is what we see. This is what you pick up Ad Age, you pick up Ad Week, you pick up any rag, you look at any blog, and we'll look at case studies all day long. The top 10 ways to get people to like you on Facebook. The top 10 ways to win an iPad using Twitter. No, no, no. People are not avatars, yet this is still, even those who are succeeding in social media today, which is debatable, this is how they view people. They are avatars. You know, and if I had a couple minutes, I'd add another slide right after this, start putting clout scores on there. Avatars with scores so that we can figure out who's more important. These clicks in social networks are not clicks, yet we're still looking at it as impressions, reach, click-throughs. This is the audience formerly known as the audience. If you read Jay Rosen's piece, he's a professor at NYU, he's talked about this for years, is that we have to stop looking at people like they're a pair of eyeballs and start engaging to steer experiences that define better brand equity within an entirely new medium that is far more influential than any media previously. So I asked you how many of you are on Twitter. Now I have to ask you how many of you are on Twitter right now. I won't get mad. Tell me the truth. You represent the consumer that we're trying to reach in social media. You're sharing this experience with the people who follow you right now because you feel it's important. Let's pretend I'm a brand. I can get upset, I could ignore it, or I could work with it. I could understand that I could only get part of your attention right now because the other part of your attention is sharing this experience. And I need that because this is an example of one-to-one-to-many marketing. Every slide is designed to be tweetable. Less than 140 characters, actually 120 or less, so hopefully the people following you will retweet it. To understand what's going to make something worth sharing, to make something that becomes an experience so profound or so interesting, whether you like it or not, that you feel like you have to share it to your 1,000+ followers. That's what the future of all of this looks like. Therefore, it's not about content. It now becomes about context. Context becomes king. And in order to figure out what context prevails within your social media strategies, within your marketing campaigns, within your service, within your business, you have to recognize that as you're approaching this today is not necessarily the way customers want you to. But all of that insight, all of that advice, all of that guidance is there, right? Check out this fancy graphic. This is crazy. But there's you on one side, there's the customer on the other side, and what they want is the gap between us. So we see day in and day out, just read Mashable, how many businesses are building social media programs. But the question is, are they really connecting with customers? It turns out that customers are far more pragmatic in what they want in social media. And I think the best way to figure out what they want is to ask them. An interesting stat. At this moment, those who are actively engaging with brands already know and love that brand. Why would you need social media to reach the people you already reach effectively today? The idea is to grow your audience. The idea is to grow your consumer base. The idea is to grow your community. If you ask customers why they're on social networks, hopefully this isn't surprising, but the number one reason is that they're there to connect with friends and family, not you. Once we recognize that part, it's like a 12-step program. We can get on the road to recovery. But you'll see there towards the bottom, 23% will say that they're there to interact with brands. So what do you do with that? How do you grow that number? Well, let's start to analyze the gap. I'm going to assume the brand perspective for a moment. Customers are on Facebook and they want to connect with us. This is why we're putting it in our advertisements, because they want to learn about new products. Our customers want to connect with us on Twitter because they want information. And more importantly, all of our strategies are going to be aimed at friends, fans, and followers because we know that our customer wants to engage with us in a community. So now I'm going to test my acting skills and go to the customer perspective. Well, as a customer, actually, what I want are discounts and special offers. Oh yeah, can I have the ability to buy what it is that I like here in Facebook? Because I really don't want to go to your crappy Web 1.0 website. And those are the number one reasons that brands think customers want to engage and the number one reasons why customers really want to engage. And you can see the extent of that gap. What customers say is that they want companies to design experiences that deliver tangible results, that deliver tangible value. Because I need to get something. I recognize that I need to get something as a customer because I know I'm giving you something. I'm giving you time, I'm giving you attention, and I'm giving you access to my social graph. That, as a customer, I recognize is a form of implied endorsement. If I like something, if I retweet you, if I share something, I'm giving you my blessing, and I'm sharing it with now not just my social graph, but what's quickly becoming the interest graph. The people that we're connected to because we share common interests. We are already starting to see this happening in measurable volumes, by the way, that customers are leaving the brands that they once connected with because there was no value. Maybe there was value one time to enter a contest, to get a discount, to win something, to get something for free, but that quickly expired. Most of the brand strategies that you read today, or that you see, or that you listen to at conferences, really just focus on that like. Once we have the like, then they think their job shifts into an editorial mode, where all they have to do is keep a calendar of content that keeps you interested, that keeps you liking them. It doesn't work that way. See, it's not about liking a brand, it's about loving a brand, about living that brand, about becoming its ambassador, because it's not just something that's cool. In social media, studies already show that the best customer brand relationships are because that brand becomes a form of self-expression. That is nothing new in marketing, by the way. But in social media, it becomes pronounced. It becomes amplified. I like this brand because it says something about me. What are you going to do to trigger me to become that representative for you? Well, if you looked at Exact Target and Code Tweet's report, you can see, and this should not really come as a surprise, yet it is to so many people. I stopped liking a brand because the company posted too frequently. My wall was becoming too crowded with marketing posts. Or I found the content to be boring. Not rocket science. It's actually just expressing reality. The same is true for Twitter. So what do you do about this? Well, you ask them, what do you want? And they all say, I need value. I need tangible value. I don't need tangible value once. I need it now and over time. Use discretion in that engagement once you have me as a fan, once you have me as a follower. But recognize that you have to keep my attention. You have to keep my affinity. You have to keep my allegiance. What we're looking at is chasing the social consumer now. And it starts with identifying who they are. It starts with intelligence, and then it starts with meaningful engagement. And when I say intelligence, that's such a scary word. What I mean is, sure, use Radian6, use Scout Labs, use any tool you want to listen to the marketplace. But do more than monitor it. Do more than tell me how many brand mentions you have, how many brand mentions you have versus your competition. What's this sentiment look like? Positive, neutral, negative. I need to know what people are saying and doing, and what they love, what they're missing, what they're looking for. I wrote a report a few weeks ago, or maybe it's been a few months now, about the Starbucks interest graph, where I used all of the free data available today to give Starbucks an idea of what people really liked, what they loved. Not just about monitoring, but about intelligence. To use a free tool to get free information to make their engagement strategy a lot more meaningful. And the response I got was, oh, you can do that on Twitter? Yes, you can, because intelligence tells you what you need to do. It's about the value that lies underneath what monitoring tells you today. It's about actually reading what people are saying. It's about clicking on negative experiences to see exactly what it's all about. It's about reading the neutral posts to see why it's sitting there in the gray zone. It's about getting a better feel for what people want. This is about finding your own answers, not about looking for best practices, not about going to Google and say examples of social media and your industry to see what comes back. That assumes that those people know what they're doing, which they probably don't, because they're probably measuring success by how many people like them, how many people are following them, how many people viewed their YouTube video. Not necessarily about the exchange of value that the customer will say they got. More importantly, this is about designing valuable experiences, meaningful experiences that people won't just follow or fan you, but that they'll interact with you and represent you within these networks. This intelligence should hopefully yield to what I call the 5 eyes of social marketing. It starts with this intelligence, this information that's out there, what people like, what they don't like, who they're connected to and why, who they admire and why, who they feel are their influencers, what networks are they in, And that hopefully transcends into insight, where you get ideas, where you get inspired, where those ideas then hopefully build confidence, lead to pilot programs that test a different type of engagement strategy for interaction, and you influence behavior. You influence experiences. You become an influencer as a brand. And it's odd to me that after, 50 years now, that this hasn't been in the mix before, that we focused on product, price, place, and promotion. Not that it's wrong. It's just that now knowing that you need to take a human perspective in all that you do, it has to take the center stage. Everything about this changes the strategy when you take these influential social consumers in mind about the strategy. I'm not saying that you have to market the same way to everybody. You have 3 distinct types of consumers you're reaching today. Traditional, which are probably more than fine with your website. They're probably more than fine with watching broadcast news and reading newspapers as well. You have the online consumer who uses Google as a home base, email as a home base. And then you have this social consumer where they make decisions differently. They find and share information differently. And it's understanding who they are that allows you to connect with them, because those are the people that are driving social media right now. Sure, our parents, our relatives are joining social networks because they have to. They're not the social consumer I'm talking about yet. They're still mired in the online world. I'm talking about the hyper-social consumer and how you connect with them. What do you want them to do? And what value do you offer? And really what it comes down to is emotion, realizing that social media is a very emotional landscape. And the driver, the connector here is empathy, understanding what it is that motivates them, that inspires them, that gets them to share or to take action. Getting this empathy is there in that intelligence, and all you have to do is simply be human in understanding it and recognizing it, and then designing it into programs, because realistically what this is about is uniting cause and effect, having outcomes, and those outcomes could be positive experiences, referrals, recommendations, click-throughs, purchases, what have you, shifts in sentiment. But having a cause and effect is rooted in empathy. Because the thing that a lot of brands don't take into consideration is that really what they're trying to do and what customers are telling them to do is to provide enough value to enter what I call the trust zone, which is this connection around the ecosystem. The people you surround yourself with, you trust. You've qualified that information. Maybe you didn't do it originally. Maybe you followed too many people, and now you're paring it back down. But to get into that trust zone means that you've earned your way into it. So you're either going to reach a consumer because of another consumer who's in that trust zone, or because you earned a place in that trust zone, and that was earned through value. That was earned through consistent value. You know, when I studied engagement, I couldn't find a definition out there. Even today, I can't find a definition for engagement that makes brands understand what this is about. So if it begins with defining how a brand and a consumer connect and interact within networks of relevance, then where does it go from there? Its true meaning, its true value, is defined by the takeaway value, sentiment, and the resulting actions that follow that engagement. That means that meaningful engagement for you is now a market differentiator. It's a competitive advantage. It actually is designed to steer experiences. And if you look at these experiences within social today, they're not unlike Amazon reviews. People either love something or they hate something. You see 5-star reviews and 1-star reviews, and maybe a few 3s and 2s for the balanced perspective, but it's really extreme. And that's what social media is all about. That's why customer service was so quick to jump on this, because when people expressed themselves, it was usually negative. What a lot of brands have figured out long ago, especially lifestyle brands, was this became not just a form of self-expression, but a form of aspiration, right? And social media, when you look at just the engagement, when you look at what people say, if you look at a word cloud of all of the people that you follow, you'll actually see big emotional words come up. And that's the idea of this, is serving in that community as an aspirational role. It comes even down to how you talk about your brand, your product, your company. There are studies already out there that show the most meaningful, shareable, retweetable words for Twitter, the days to post, the verbs to post on Facebook, because they are already showing that people take action around them because there's a connection there. So your story is probably going to sound a lot less like innovative, paradigm-shifting, groundbreaking, disruptive, market-leading, and more like the words that are either going to talk to somebody's heart, somebody's mind, or you can take the risk and fly over their head. And this is why social objects that you design really become about the future of marketing. It's about giving people not just tangible value, but packageable value that they can share. Not just view. That's easy, right? How many of you have been asked to create a viral video? All right, keep your hand up if it went viral. We're working on that. But there's got to be an outcome to it, right? What happens after that view? Social objects, to be the future of marketing, are going to have an outcome that's going to justify your actions as a marketer in new media and justify the business outcomes, right? You'll probably hear this word a lot more than you should, transmedia. But really what it is, it's about storytelling. It's about connecting narrative across multiple platforms. Do you create a video on YouTube? Do you create a series of tweets? Do you create a landing page on Facebook? What are you creating that sort of brings this story, this narrative to life? That's transmedia. Social media represents a wonderful conduit for this, right? Because every single network has its own culture. What's shared, what's mentioned, what's talked about within these networks is different. So you can create these social objects within these networks that have value. And then there's a balance within that, right? You guys know earned media pretty well. You know paid media very well. But now you have this whole new suite of things that you can choose and experiment with, right? Promoted products on Twitter, shared or sponsored posts that we're seeing, for example, Charlie Sheen getting paid to run that paid post for internship.com. Companies like Adley and IZEA who make a living off of having people endorse your products. And then you have own media, the videos, the viral videos that you create, the social objects that you create, where we stop looking at things from a simplistic view and we start looking at things from an action view. Making it shareable, making it significant, making it meaningful for someone. Helping someone understand that even with a targeted campaign, you can entice the most skeptical or casual users to engage, to do something, to take action. You just have to help them figure out what it is you want them to do, and then also what's in it for them. What marketing starts to look like, what these social objects start to look like, what engagement strategies start to look like is this balance of things that cater to the needs of this social consumer. They'll carry different flavors of advertising, communications, and marketing, as well as service. This idea of empathy, this idea of resolution or solution, direction. The problem is, you recognize this as a marketer today. How do you convince management that the power switch has to stay on? Because it's not just about engagement for a campaign, it's about engagement for this idea of continuum or always on. So to give you an example, with a switch, you fail in the competition for attention, right? In fact, I can't tell you how many cover stories for magazines I'm seeing now and over time and in the future that say, oh my gosh, we are creating a society where everybody has ADD because no one can hold their attention. When I was writing my next book, I studied a lot of student behavior. And is anybody in the room old enough to remember Cliff Notes? How many of you use those for book reports? I did. Do you know that kids today won't even read the book? They won't even get Cliff Notes. They will watch the YouTube video summary for the book and write the report on that. Attention is becoming really difficult to hold. We can fight it or we can work with it. If you have not seen this study by Sysomos, it's very revealing. Only 6% of the 140 million tweets that fly across Twitter every day will see a retweet. A retweet. Of the most amazing retweets, memes that are out there, they will only last for an hour, and then they're dead, unless it's about Justin Bieber, because then that goes on for all eternity. But the idea is that if you are just competing for the moment, then that's all you'll ever do. How do you figure out to stay or to keep your campaigns, to keep your objects, to keep your programming valuable, but also on, getting people to talk? This study that came out from Edelman in their Trust Barometer report said that somebody has to now see things 3 to 5 times in order for it to have a hope for recognition. Anybody know this guy? How many of you, I just have to know, how many of you have said, I'm on a horse, to someone in casual conversation? I have, I'm on a horse. This is considered probably by far to be the best social media campaign in the world. But I want you to see something. Old Spice, before this video series, before the engagement influencer video series, averaged about 2,000-ish conversations a day. And when that first series of videos came out, it jumped up to 62,000. The next day of videos, it kicked it up to 100,000, and then they stopped. What happened? The mentions went down. What you don't see after that one is it went right back down to 2,000. So as brilliant as they were, it came down to something as simple as out of sight, out of mind, right? I mean, it became a cultural phenomenon. Now, I think, who's he dating now? Kathy Griffin? It's helped his career, maybe not his dating life, but this guy is a celebrity. Old Spice probably sold some body wash too, but that wasn't cheap to produce, and that wasn't cheap to get going. That was funded as a campaign, not as continuum. So how do you stay relevant over time? How do you shift from campaign to continuum? How do you take a sliver of that budget to keep that alive now and over time so that Old Spice has part of the conversation every single day, that it's growing its community because there's tangible value in that? What happened after you watched that video? You went on with your life. You probably went on to watch Rebecca Black, probably went on to sing Friday over and over and over again. But in all reality, you just moved on. What if those videos were designed to have an outcome? What if those videos were still alive? What if the whole initiative was an initiative every day? And this is something that I want to leave you with as we start to wrap up. It's this idea that I picked up at Twitter's developer conference last year, where the word resonance was casually thrown out from the stage. And I said, oh, that is it. That's exactly what this is about. They were talking about new ways to measure their promoted products, and that they weren't going to just measure it or price it around CPM, that they weren't going to look at impressions. They were going to look at resonance. What a huge revelation. When we look at all of these things we just talked about, the common theme is people have other things to do when they're on social networks. How do you keep your social object? How do you keep your campaign? How do you keep your landing page? How do you keep your engagement strategy alive in the stream so that if there was a resonance score that you were keeping for yourself, how would you keep it alive longer than that 1 hour even the best retweets see on Twitter? How would you keep your program alive so that people are still engaging with it, interacting with it, sharing it today? If resonance is measured by, I don't know, favorites, click-throughs, retweets, mentions, conversations, referrals, you name it, how does it stay alive longer? And if you had to design your campaign differently to keep it alive longer, what would you do? What case would you make? Who would you be trying to reach, and what outcome would ultimately measure its success? Because I believe that this simple concept of RRS, the idea of building in relevance in order to earn resonance, in order to increase your significance within the community, is a simple yet critical path for social media moving forward. It takes the fun and the BS out of this and adds real value, real longevity to this, where conversations about, I'm getting tired of the word social media, really start to fall apart and really start to get smart, really start to take a foothold in changing marketing changing business dynamics with customers, making it about the future of branding, the future of business, not about telling people what you do, letting people be part of it, where it's co-created, not just created. See, our task is to do a few things. Yes, we have to boost numbers. Yes, we have to show our executives that this is worth their investment. In fact, that it's probably worth more than they're investing in it today. But it's going to take some work from your part to demonstrate that it can be done at a much different level, much more engaging, meaningful, and valuable level. That's going to be different for each and every one of you. And that's your job to figure out. That's your role in all of this. You're working with each other are going to help make this actually not just the future of business or branding, but actually the future of how customers and businesses exist and how they help each other. The future of this is not just about engagement. The future of this is not just about service. The future of this is not just about relationships. This is about giving a voice and recognizing that voice in a way that helps them gain stature and helps you gain authority in the process. So with that, I'd like to invite Jay from Social Vibe up on stage. And after Jay, we're going to take a few questions from the audience. And the first question that comes up is going to, I have a copy of the book I brought, so I'll just give that away. And Jay, take it away.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Good morning. Quick show of hands. How many of you buy, sell, or measure impressions? Be honest, it's an addiction. Well, next 5 minutes I want to spend entering you in rehab. There's a problem with this proxy called impressions. There's billions and billions of them. Last year, 4 trillion banners and display ads were sold and shown to Americans. 4 trillion. And on average, with a 0.1% click-through rate, you are telling your CMO, yes, I am wasting 99.9% of my budget. It makes no sense. You get away with it because everybody else is doing it. That didn't work with your mom when you were in 3rd grade. It shouldn't work today. Brian was spot on, and it's amazing. I think he's a brother by a separate mother, because he talked about value exchange. In today's world, it's not about pushing down and forcing people. It's how do you not bombard them with useless things that we've all turned down. Do you know there are surveys of consumers of one of the things they like about Facebook is that it has no ads? Let that sink in. Consumers have tuned this all out, okay? No one is paying attention to this bombarding, okay? You have to be invited into the conversation, exactly what he's talking about. And you have to value their time. So rather than repeat what was the greatest introduction I've ever had to what I firmly believe, it's like being at a religious revival. Here's what we do at Social Vibe. We reach 190 million people a month. And what we do is we reach them at that moment when they're somewhere on the internet and they're being asked to pay for something. It could be virtual goods for Cityville or Farmville. It could be music in Pandora. It could be an article that they want to read behind a paywall. And if they match what our advertisers want, we say, hey, instead of taking out your wallet, pay with your attention. You want this farm cash? Watch this Toyota ad. You want to listen to more music commercial free? Watch this Disney trailer. And what happens is, first of all, the people are 100% opting into the experience. They're picking a brand that they care about. They had time to spend with it, so they're open to the information as opposed to being interrupted and annoyed. And what then happens is they then have a positive experience because they started from a positive frame of mind, and they go and they share it. We also reach 20-plus million smartphone users in the U.S., same way. And when they opt in, we take over their whole screen. They asked for it. They spend a couple seconds, a few minutes, whatever it may be. It's totally up to them. They get their reward, and they move on. I can get Warren Buffett to do this because for him to take out the credit card to buy a $2 article or something makes no sense. And this happens millions and millions of times a day. So we've run campaigns for the biggest brands in the world, the Procters & Gamble's, the Toyotas, the Microsofts, et cetera. We have 100% renewal. 80% at larger dollar amounts. We reach these customers, and we reach globally, at those value exchange points. And it's all down to two simple things. One is immediate gratification. Anybody remember S&H green stamps or gold bond stamps? Anybody? Oh, I'm too old. Yeah. So we used to get stickers that you could save up for something, and by the time you save up your thank you points, how many have airline miles that they have never redeemed? Okay? It just isn't immediate. It isn't relevant, the hassle, the everything. But if right then and there, at the moment somebody's asking you for money, you go, wow, I can get it for free? Thank you, brand. We also reach, what's interesting in our network, about 30 million people in the U.S. every month at the moment that they're donating to charity. Anybody familiar with causes? We're the majority of revenue for causes, CauseCast. We support 14,000 charities. So that not that the brand doing cause marketing, that the brand, Avon does a great job. Avon breast cancer. Everybody associated with the product has that potential. It's a great match. But if you're selling a chair, the suit, whatever, it doesn't line up. But have the consumer pick the cause that they care about, that local dog shelter, saving the whales, whatever. We have celebrities. Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, has a suicide prevention line that he's passionate about. He drives people to Social Vibe. They sign up because they like him, and they fund that for the year, and it doesn't cost them a penny. They do it by watching a brand and knowing that that brand money now goes to them. So if you volunteer at a dog shelter, you then tweet out to your whole graph and say, wow, there's Kraft money today, or McDonald's money, or whoever our advertiser is, and let's get as much of that to our cause as somebody else's. What a great way to make a living. And it works. So let me give you some quick analysis of those 300 campaigns. I could brag about the campaign Super Bowl Sunday that averaged 2 minutes and 56 seconds of time on average. Wasn't our record holder. iTunes had one for over 3 minutes. These are people volunteering to spend that time. But on average across all these, remember, 100% consumer initiated. Nothing's popping up, nothing's doing anything. They said, now's a good time. I'd like to have an ad. Please give me an ad. They then engage. 80% of that population will complete the entire thing. We have one brand, this is being videotaped, so I won't mention that, has the most boring video on the planet. It's 2 minutes long with no edits, no production values, and feels like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, okay, and reading War and Peace. That being said, they know their audience. It is not for me to be smug. They know their audience. We find them demographically, and guess what? 40% of them share that video with their friends, and their friends open and they share. They're right. They know their audience. Who am I to judge? So 80% will complete it. Average time spent across anything. We have campaigns like for Macy's. What do you want from Santa? Quick, no video, no anything. So that gets the average down, but it was very effective in the sense that it instantly emotes. Other campaigns are real easy to get people to share. You're watching the Toy Story trailer, but we ask you a question. We keep you engaged during it. And the last question is always something to pull you in, something emotional from your heart, what Brian was talking about. On Toy Story, the last question we asked you was, what was your favorite toy as a kid? You're going to fill that in. We don't care. We're not collecting a survey. But when we then ask you, would you like to share this or tweet this, share rate goes up to over 50%, on average to 170 people. So your earned media goes through the roof. You look like a genius. You spent this much. You got that much value for your brand. If you want them to go to your fan page, on average, over 40% of our people will do that. On third-party measurements of purchase intent, unbelievable. One of the movie studios, we do openings for virtually every movie, launching virtually every TV show, even just helped the Today Show increase the ratings. What's really interesting is we're 9 times more effective at putting butts in a theater seat than any other form of advertising. We just did a campaign, again, for a movie that wasn't tracking so well, going for a very specific demographic. We went out just to that demographic across all of our partners, and more than 40% of the people that watched the engagement went on to ticket buying. Unheard of. And then sharing it. We average across all campaigns about 15% share. That means somebody has become that ambassador, exactly what Brian talked about. And this has been repeated over tons and tons. So I'll give you one quick practical case study in this 5 minutes that I think will be really interesting to you. So I will use the pejorative of describing value exchange. People call it bribing. So Microsoft Bing wanted to have more fans on Facebook than the other guys. They hired us. 20 hours later, they did. They were over 1 million fans. And you go, well, you bribed them. Here's the interesting thing. Microsoft is a data-driven company. 3 months later and 6 months later, they measured those fans as opposed to organic fans. Our fans were 4 times more likely to still be using Bing than an organic, unbribed fan. Doesn't make sense. Why is this? If you saw a billboard, a print ad, heard on the radio about Bing, you'd go and try it, and you'd use it the same way you used Google, and you get kind of the same results. No great change, so you go back to Google. I won't do a show of hands because it's being videotaped, but some of us may have done that. If you did our engagement, you average 77 seconds of what I'll call Bing University, being taught how to use the decision engine, how to get different results. You actually played with the tool and were educated and trained. So if you have a product that has a value that actually takes some knowledge and paying attention, why dish over cable, why this over that, selling insurance, cruise ship lines, it is amazing what you can do when people are focused and engaged and you're valuing their time, they're valuing their experience. They participate because they want to get these offers again. They want to have free cash offered to them. They want to have their charity helped. And these are the results that we got time and time again. So everybody from QSRs, CPG, pharma, automotive, everybody has now started working with this model, and we are expanding across all 3 screens. So we're now working with this ways that are getting this two-way engagement into the living room and on that as well. But the fact that every day we reach a Super Bowl-sized Sunday and can get people to give up that time and then share it, that's what engagement's about. So let's bring Brian back up for questions. First question. She was up first.
All right. Good. I didn't even see that.
She gets.
Earlier about careful on how many fans and friends you're losing. Is there, and this may be a really tough question, but is there a healthy rate, or I mean, when do you start getting nervous that you're losing?
You know, I actually don't know what that rate is. So the question she's asking is there a rate, is there a metric of analyzing the quitters or the unlikers? And this is brand new, people actually starting to talk about this. So I haven't seen anything official yet, although I have been a personal user of Quitter, which tells me when people stop following me on Twitter and what that tweet was that sent them over the edge. But I use that kind of religiously. You know, to better scope what I should say and when I should say it. But at the same time, this is stuff that we're all paying attention to today because really, you know, Jay showed us what happens when you can amass a lot of fans on Facebook and then also keep them engaged. I don't even know that enough brands are looking at it that way yet.
So take a stab at it. Great question, by the way. It's one that CMOs ask me all the time. We are so early in this process. If your number's going down, you should be worried already because it either means you did a stunt. If you remember a decade ago when everybody's focus was let's get email addresses and go, wow, we got all these email addresses. Yeah. And they get stale like cheese. Getting fans is the same thing. Getting them there, that's the easy part, as I showed you. You know, write us a check and 24 hours later you'll have more fans than God. What are you doing with them once they come there? And we'll walk you through a lot of ways to keep them engaged in a way that doesn't seem about marketing, but about embracing.
And there's also a product that's about to hit the streets called FanGager as well to look at some types of analytics that give you this if you're trying it on your own, by the way. It's just
time spent, share of voice, these are things to measure. Questions?
Can you give some examples of some companies that you are doing a good job of doing what you talked about, creating a valuable exchange via social?
Oh, I can give a bunch. Marriott just did a great one where you made a bed for the homeless, but while you're doing that, you're making bed in their new chain and what the features are, and so you're feeling empowered that you're doing this, and you want to share and invite other people to make beds and end this. Kia did a really, really clever one that I really enjoyed for all the millions, hundreds of millions of people to play Farmville and Cityville and all the Zynga games. For Super Bowl Sunday, you got to make a team. You could have Cityville play Yoville or play whatever. You got to see your characters in a new environment. And then the halftime message of the game was their commercial. But people had so much fun seeing something that they were passionate about, spending 40 hours a month building their city, that they shared it with everybody that they played Cityville with, who shared it to everybody. And next thing you know, 100 million people were engaged and having fun with the product. So a lot of real innovations taking place.
You mentioned earlier, Jay, when we were talking before the session started about American Express, and I would also use them as an example. From an earned media standpoint, they're aligning with some of the more valuable and recognized voices in the small to medium-sized business sector, bloggers, influencers, pundits, authorities, and they're rallying them up to create content for Forum. And they're providing that content for free. They're just packaging it in a way that brands American Express, of course, but it's utilizing Facebook, it's using Twitter, it's using blogs, and it's also using the extended communities of each one of those voices, and it's building a greater network for American Express and for Forum. The other thing that I would suggest, and I won't get into it too deep today, but is we hear a lot about Dell in terms of how they're using social media for customer service, maybe even for F-commerce or e-commerce through Twitter. I guess that would be T-commerce. But if you go to SlideShare and look up the name Manish, M-A-N-I-S-H, and Dell, he just published a very interesting deck that shows exactly how much social media has transformed every division of the organization. And it was really enlightening. And the other thing that I would encourage you to read is the Razorfish Liminal Report that was published in conjunction with Virgin America on what they're doing that's extremely inspiring.
I'll give you a great example. I won't mention the brand because they don't let us publish their results, but somebody else sitting next to me just did. If any of you buy TV commercials, I will show you how to get the most value out of your TV commercial in 2 seconds. So imagine you are a network and you're going to be entering the late-night talk show wars. And you're going to have a talk show going on against established things like The Daily Show and Leno and Letterman. What you would do is you'd promo your show all day and hope that people watch. Well, if all day you have one demographic and you want the 18 to 24-year-old hipsters, it doesn't work. So here's what we do, and we now do this for ABC, CBS, NBC, VH1, Ovation, I mean, every network and every show. We go out at the time right before the show starts and find the millions of people engaging, playing, doing something on the internet, and we hit them at that wall. They get their value exchange, their Facebook currency, their Zynga points. We show them the opening monologue, a little bit of Springsteen, whoever the musical guest is, and that's all brought to you by XYZ brand. The show's ratings go through the roof because we give them a countdown clock, so now they can continue building their city, hit with the remote control, and watch 2 screens. We all do it. Now, not only does the show rating go up, and did you get branded for introducing them and reminding them of their favorite show, but your commercial in the show goes up, and you get even more value. And this is being repeated by the biggest brands over and over again of saying, I can't buy more commercials in those top shows, but I can get my commercial in the top show to resonate. I want to steal the word, thank you, better. So really easy trick that you can do anytime to increase your social relevance.
We have a few minutes left. Yeah. So he's asking about specific mechanics and metrics for resonance as a score to complement or replace what we're using today. I don't even know that Twitter could define it when it threw it out casually. I bid onto it because that's exactly what we have to get to in order to keep something alive in the stream. And if you think about it, then it's an interaction standpoint. But you use the words ROI. And I don't know, when there's the ROI in terms of its strict definition, right? Return on investment. And then there's the ROI where we look at things like impressions, which to me doesn't necessarily show ROI. So to me, I think one of the things for resonance is going to have a defined outcome in the strategy. And what is that outcome? So Old Spice, it probably scored very well in terms of shares and views. But in terms of ROI, I don't think it could say, what did we get out of this, unless it was designed into it. And I think outcome is going to be the biggest factor that needs to start to be designed into a lot of these social objects. Is it a sale? Is it a referral? Is it a recommendation? Is it simply a view? Because we have all kinds of other metrics that do just fine without resonance. Resonance is something I think we need to explore because there's a lot more tangible value to it. It's a lot more meat to it. It changes the nature of marketing because now you're designing business outcomes into it. I think it's worth an experiment. And I think when we are spending and exploring, we're spending money and exploring new realms that we don't necessarily know what kind of answers to get, I think it should start with how long can you keep it alive in the stream and how many interactions or outcomes can you trigger because of it. This is why influence is becoming such a hot topic right now in companies like Clout, Peer Index, Tracker. They're starting to get engaged by brands because they're starting to think about things in terms of outcomes. Virgin America has been very bullish in working with Clout, for example, on giving free flights and free goods to influencers because they know that they can measure an outcome around people tweeting about those experiences or the fact that they got free airline tickets because it sells more products. How many of you have heard about the Palms Casino and Resort and Clout program? Well, if you check in to the Palms Casino and you give them your Clout score upon check-in, and it's, some argue what the number is, but if it's over 50, you become a high roller. You become a VIP at that hotel. They will upgrade you. They will give you tickets to a show because they know that the outcome of that is going to be traced referrals. So in terms of resonance, they can weigh the investment of an upgrade and tickets to the return of new sales.
To give you the concrete that we tell CMOs today, we didn't use the word resonance. We give every campaign a social score compared to the graph of all of them, and it's time spent times virality, so how much it's shared and what the earned media is on that. And then if it's a CPG, if it's a packaged product or a movie ticket, there are actually third-party research firms that can show by DMA, by zip code, what the lift is. And it is concrete to bottom-line ROI, which is why the spends have now reached TV-size spends with engagement media. Great question. Think we're out of time?
We're out of time. All right, so I want to thank all of you for your time today, and if you're free around 2 o'clock, I'll be doing a book signing at the bookstore. But thank you, Jay. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.